everybody, thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Iron Man 3. So we are finally getting back to my very slowly progressing MCU movie review series. There's just so many movies in this series and I don't want to just bombard you guys with nothing but Marvel, so I've decided to slowly have these come out every here and there, and this time I am joined in this video by BLACKTASTIC News. The last time we did a collab, he was in my review for the first Rush Hour film. I always love having him here on this channel. He's an awesome dude. If you guys don't know about BLACKTASTIC News, he does tons of things like movie reviews and all kinds of things like his own documentaries over on his channel that celebrate movies, black culture, and so much more. I really love his channel and I love the content he's putting out. He's a really supportive guy, and you guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box, and we're going to hear from him in just one moment about the first film that would follow up the Avengers. When the Avengers came out, it was this amazing thing for me. If you guys are interested in checking out my review for the Avengers that I did with Rashad G Reviews and Q Reviews, you guys can go and check that out in my Marvels playlist over on my channel. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the first film that followed that up, Iron Man 3, once again starring Robert Downey Jr. as the titular character. And when this movie first came out, it was very divisive, and it's still pretty divisive amongst a lot of really hardcore comic book fans. And I remember walking out of this movie and not necessarily being in love. Now, that's not to say I didn't enjoy things about the film, but this is a perfect example of a film that grew on me more and more with rewatches. And especially now that the Infinity Saga is over, I've grown to really enjoy this film. One thing that I love about this film is because of the events of the first film, we find Tony Stark in a much different place this time. He's dealing with trauma and PTSD of the events of the past. I really love the fact that they chose to focus on his PTSD in this film and kind of show us what the events of the first Avengers did to him. It's something that I felt was really interesting, and every time I go back and rewatch this film, it has its own identity in that. At the end of the day, this film is really about Tony Stark realizing that his past can come back to haunt him. I really enjoy what he has to go through in this film and what he really has to face. Now, one thing that people have a big criticism on when it comes to this film that I have to kind of agree is at least an objective thing to talk about. I don't really view it as a negative anymore, but when the movie first came out, I definitely did. This movie is definitely more of a Tony Stark film than it is an Iron Man film. He does not spend a lot of time in the suit in this film, and that's something that I think, looking back thematically, was really well done. He really has to find who he is as Tony Stark before he puts on that suit, and it kind of, for me, gives a little bit more weight to that line in Spider-Man Homecoming, where he tells him, if you're nothing without the suit, then, you know, you shouldn't have it.
This is all I have. I'm nothing without this suit.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
And I love that. He really, in this movie, had to find who he was outside of the suit. He was dealing with trauma, dealing with PTSD based on the events of the first film. And like I mentioned, part of the whole story here is that the events of his past are catching up with him. At the beginning of this film, via a flashback, we're introduced to a character played by Pearce, who is kind of this very dweeby, over-the-top character that has long hair, he's got acne, he's got a lisp, he even has a limp, he walks with a cane. So they went completely out of their way to make him as, you know, kind of dweeby and just like what is supposed to be unappealing as a person. And he introduces himself to Tony Stark. He's a big fan, and he tells him that he wants to work with him, that he has this idea, technology idea that he wants to work with him on. And Tony Stark tells him to go wait up on the roof and tells him that he'll be there to meet him very soon. And he ends up never meeting him. He kind of just sent him there just to kind of get rid of him. And he ends up, you know, this guy goes up there, he's sitting on the roof, it's New Year's Eve, and he's really excited to the proposition that Tony Stark wants to work with him, and he just kind of gets left hanging. And, you know, it broke his heart, and he was, you know, really destroyed from it. But now this guy ends up becoming the villain of the story. Now, one thing that upset a lot of people when it came to this movie was the fact that all the marketing and everything leading up to it really led to the fact that Ben Kingsley's The Mandarin was going to be the villain. All of the marketing led on the fact that he was going to be the Mandarin in the film. The Mandarin is one of the biggest comic book characters in the Marvel world. Maybe not one of the biggest, but he's definitely a big one if you're a big comic book fan. And I think a lot of us were really excited to see the Mandarin brought to screen. I could already tell from the marketing that it wasn't going to be a completely comic book accurate version. I literally almost took down this bookshelf right now. I stepped back and almost took it out. But yeah, anyway, it didn't look like he was going to be a completely comic book accurate version of the Mandarin, but it looked like it was going to be its own interpretation, and I thought Ben Kingsley was fantastic casting. And then you find out about halfway through the movie that he's actually an actor playing the part of the Mandarin. You know, he's filming these terrorist videos and all this kind of stuff, and he's kind of this dorky guy. He's not the really cool and menacing villain that he's shown to be throughout the film, and that really rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. And at the end of the film, we find out that Guy Pearce's character is actually the Mandarin, which I've heard they're kind of looking to change in future films. I don't know how accurate that is, but yeah, you know, that was a big thing that it was kind of like a rug being pulled out from beneath a lot of fans, and they really didn't like that. As time has gone on, I've grown to enjoy that. that. It did bother me the first time I watched the movie, but I enjoy that now a little bit more. I feel like it has its own identity in its silliness, and I think that the film is strong enough in its story about Tony Stark that I can kind of just put that to the side. Now, before I give you guys my final thoughts on this movie, let's go ahead and hear what Blacktastic News have to say about this.
Oh, what's up, my YouTube fam? I'm here to support my homeboy's channel, Anthony A. Perez. We are reviewing Iron Man 3. Off the bat, opening day I went and seen this movie, came out dissatisfied. Did not like this movie. From my understanding, all of my comic book nerd friends who read comic books, because I don't read comic books, they go, yo, T, man, this is very comic book accurate. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. I didn't like this movie. I love part 1 and I like part 2 a lot. Part 2 don't get no love for most people, but I enjoyed it. Black Widow was awesome in that movie. And I personally like her with long hair as Black Widow. She was fine. But back to part 3. Let's start with the trailer. The trailer was very deceptive, which is cool. I don't mind misdirection. Just make sure it pays off in theaters. And man, that misdirect, it missed big time. Ben Kingsley is a great actor. And him being the Mandarin, I'm like, okay, a terrorist blowing up stuff. I'm like, I like this. In the middle of the second act, the movie takes a huge turn. And I didn't like it. It was cool, but I didn't buy it. Guy Pearce, character in this movie, I didn't like at all. Dude, no, didn't like it. Robert Downey Jr. Now, this movie is his movie. It's not an Iron Man movie. It's a Tony Stark movie. And that's cool. I love Tony. I could spend all day with him on his adventures. But last I checked, this is called Iron Man 3. And that third act with all the different Iron Mans, I didn't like it. Didn't like it. It lost the essence to me of Iron Man. Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. I love her character. But that third act, well, she went through, I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is different. I buy it. But that character, who she became, never comes back again in any Avengers movies, Spider-Man movies, nothing. So what happened in Iron Man 3 with her is a one-off, one episode thing, and they never bring it up or address it ever again, to my knowledge. Now this movie takes place during Christmas time, which I hate, didn't like that. The little boy, either he's annoying or charming. Movies that try to have a little sidekick sometimes works and it doesn't work. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Short round, lovable, loved him. This kid got on my goddamn nerve. Tony Stark is amazing. They show his brain, his genius. I love it about the movie. And I have to mention, this movie has a director who's different. My man Shane Black took over. And he's more into the comedy aspect. And people think this is the funniest of all 3 Iron Mans. It wasn't working for me. It just wasn't. It just lost all of its essence from the first 2. And by this time, you know, Robert Downey Jr. is a mega star. He wants money. No, you're showing my face through this whole movie. And all the different Iron Mans at the end and the villain protagonist in this movie and the antagonist at the very end, wasn't buying it. Did not like it. This movie left me soulless. I walked out going, damn. And I found myself doing something that I don't do anymore. I bought the DVD when it first came out to complete my collection and never watched it. Until I did this review, I opened it up and had to watch it. I bought that movie like what, 7 years ago and never watched it, sat up on the shelf. And I did it to complete the trilogy. I watch part 1 any day, anytime. I watch part 2 any day, anytime. This one, dude, it took me 7 years to watch it again, and it was just as bad as it was the day I seen it in theaters. I might be of the minority, and that's cool. I did not like this movie. I like certain aspects of this movie, but overall, I wasn't feeling it. This was a funky joint. I did not like it. But, you know, he redeemed himself in those Avengers movies and stuff like that, which made it better. But this movie, no, man, it's for the birds. It's for the birds. Like I said, way too much Tony Stark, not enough Iron Man. And then the new powers he has, the suits and everything, I'm like, come on. It's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. And Pepper Potts, I'm not sure how to feel about that. It was weird, but cool at the same time. This movie essentially has 2 antagonists. I didn't like neither one of them. It was stupid. Didn't like it. But hey, what else can I say? My man Anthony, let me know what you think. You know what I think. Hey, thanks for having me on. I enjoy these, but for once, you picked a movie that I didn't like, bruh. But much love, peace, and happiness. Yo, if I offend you, then you don't understand me. But if I inspire you, then you will learn to love me. Peace until next time. And just remember, yo, don't take it personal. It's just my point of view. Later.
As usual, a big thanks to BLACKTASTIC News for being in this video. Again, you guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. A fantastic guy, a fantastic channel. I highly recommend you guys go and check him out. And a big thanks to you for being in this video with me, man. So like I mentioned, the big twist in the film definitely didn't sit well with a lot of people, but I've grown to enjoy it. Now, visually, of course, you already know when it comes to Marvel movies, you're gonna have a beautiful looking film as far as the special effects, as far as the action, as far as the cinematography, and that's definitely something you still have in this film. Now, I do wish there was a little bit more Iron Man action. However, you do get a lot of that near the end of the film. There's some really great Iron Man action at the very end of the film, but there's a lot of time in the film where Tony Stark is not in his suits, and a lot of times when he is in these suits, he's in these kind of like broken down suits that literally fall apart. There's actually quite a bit of suits in this film that are falling apart almost every time that he wears them, where literally it's almost like a life or death situation, or the suit in a comedic way would just fall apart. And I think that this one is a good one. I enjoy it. I think there's some great visuals, some great action, and I think it pushes the story forward for Tony Stark. I love the fact that he's dealing with trauma and PTSD in this film, and you know, kind of I love that moment in Infinity War when Bruce Banner is telling him about who's coming, about Thanos, that this is the guy from New York who started that whole battle, that, you know, that this is the guy we've been like looking for. This is the big bad. And there's this moment where Tony Stark is like, what's his name again? And he tells him Thanos. You can tell that he's been really thinking it over, and the weight of the events of the past really lay heavy on him. And I love that he has to deal with that with the events of the Avengers. And now in this film, you know, based on what he did to Guy Pearce's character in the past, his past is coming back to haunt him, and in a way that's going to put people that he loves in danger. And in this film, it does do that with Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts. They do something with her character at the very end of the film that I feel was cool. She gets powers due to this whole Mandarin thing, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And they kind of just let that go. You know, they talk about the fact that she could die from this power that she has, and they kind of don't really, no, they don't explain it, but they just kind of move on. And in future films, she doesn't even talk about it. They never show anything about that ever again. So that always just felt like a cool thing in this movie that's just kind of underexplained, and they just kind of brush it under the rug. And I don't understand why it's really in this movie. She saves Tony Stark's life at the very end with this ability, and it just kind of seems a little bit out of place now when you watch the whole series as a whole. But yeah, guys, on overall, I do enjoy this film. I think that there's a lot there that is really cool. It's not my favorite Iron Man movie. I think without a doubt the first Iron Man movie is the best, but I think this is leaps and bounds better than Iron Man 2, which in a lot of ways was just a commercial for the other Marvel movies that would follow. So I think this is a solid film. I think there's some great visuals in here, and I think as a character study for Tony Stark and who his character would go on to be, especially with the entire Infinity Saga being done, I really enjoy that. I feel like it fits into the MCU pretty well, and I feel like it's a great follow-up to the event of the Avengers that plays on a very serious note about the PTSD and drama of having dealt with the events of that film and kind of take you out of it being so silly and comic booky. It still has that, but it kind of leans into some more serious things mentally, and I really do enjoy that about this film. Now, I do recognize this is a very divisive film, so you may be listening to me and thinking this movie is complete and utter ass, so I am curious to hear what you guys have to say. Leave those comments down below. Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Again, a big thanks to BLACKTASTIC News for being in this video with me. Super appreciative of you, man. Definitely go to the link down below where you guys can find his channel. Give him some love. Let him know I sent you. And as usual, guys, you guys can catch me in the next one. Bye-bye.